Hi everyone! In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to take this photo and turn it into this photo. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hide the work I've done so far. And then I've simply just opened up this image in Photoshop. And we're going to go ahead and make a copy or a duplicate of this layer just as a backup, just in case. So a couple ways you can do that. You can click on the layer, do copy paste. We can right click and we can duplicate layer, or you can drag it to the new layers to make a duplicate. I'm going to keep the bottom layer hidden and focus just on this top layer. Now, before we do any of the healing tools and start removing structures, we're going to go ahead and fix the color issues that are happening here: color, exposure, contrast. We're going to fix all of that first. So you're going to find all of your adjustments, your adjustment layers here in the adjustments. And now this picture specifically is leaning very pink and warm, and definitely doesn't have good white balance. We're not really getting any true whites. So I'm going to start by doing color balance, but we might also need to do things like adjust the colors. So that could be hue and saturation. We can adjust exposure, maybe even levels, brightness, contrast. So there's a lot of different ones we can use depending on what your photo needs. Now this photo, again, needs some color balance. So we've got three sliders here in the properties panel when it comes to color balance. And so right now, because this is leaning more warm, we're going to take the cyan and red slider as well as maybe the yellow and blue slider and maybe move those around. And we'll just kind of see what happens. But the goal is to get it to be neutral and get some true whites. So I'm going to start with the cyan and red. And because it leans more red, I don't want to go in the red direction. I want to balance in the opposite direction. And notice even just that one, what a big difference it made. We're getting something really warm. And if we start to pull into the cyan, we're actually getting some like neutrals, grays. The background looks gray. If we go too far though, it's going to start to turn it blue. So we're going to just get it to where that looks pretty good. And then we can try to move around some of the other sliders. So because it was pulling kind of a warmer color, we could maybe see what blue looks like, but we don't want to get it too cool toned. I think that was actually better at 0. And then let's just see what happens with magenta and green. I don't think that is making that any better. So I actually think that's a really great color balance adjustment. Notice the difference. Nice. Okay, I do think that we can maybe make the yellow of the banana pop, and maybe adjust a little bit of contrast, maybe get rid of some of the dark shadows. So I'm going to go back to my adjustments here, and this time we're going to go to hue and saturation. Now, right now, if I were to move around the hue slider, it's going to change the color of everything in the image, which looks insane. I'm going to double click to reset that. Same thing with saturation. It's going to saturate everything. Okay, but instead, I'm actually going to come up to, I think it's master here. Yes, okay, so where it says master, there's a drop down, and you can be a little bit more specific on the colors that you want to adjust. And because I want to maybe brighten up the yellows, I'm going to select yellow, and then I'm going to adjust the saturation. So notice that it's just picking up the yellows in the image. And I don't want to go crazy, but maybe just a little bit of brightness and more saturation on that yellow. Okay, I think that looks great. Now, if there's other things in the image that you want to get rid of, now I don't really see a lot of blues left, but let's just say, for example, that there was some cyan or blue left in the image. I could maybe go in and desaturate. Now, you're not seeing that here, but let me show you an example. Let me switch to blue and then focus your area on the blue label here. Now, this is not something I maybe need to do, but if you have a color in your image that you're just trying to get rid of, this is a good way to do it. So I've selected the blues, and you can see that that's starting to desaturate that blue. Now, I don't think that's necessary in this image, but you can choose a specific color and you can adjust the saturation, the lightness, brightness, but you probably don't want to change the hue. We don't want to change the color of the fruit or veggie that we are editing. Alrighty, I think we're going to try maybe one more adjustment layer just to adjust like contrast, brightness, and maybe even levels. So experiment here between these 4. They're all going to do slightly different things, but I'm going to go actually to levels, which is maybe a new one for us. And basically what you do in levels is you can move around these little sliders. And this is going to adjust the darkest points in your image, the midtones, and the highlights. And so what I was looking to do here is maybe like stop, like not have such intense shadows here. So adjust maybe some of my midtones, You can see the difference here of just kind of, it brightens up the image, but not the entire image. It's just adjusting the midtones. I don't think we want to adjust maybe any of the highlights. And I don't think I want to make the shadows any deeper. So I think that's a great adjustment. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this in a group just to show you the difference. So these 3 adjustments, here's our original, and then with the 3 adjustments, huge difference. And now we can actually start to edit out our structures. Okay, make sure when you start to edit your structures that you are on the correct layer. Make sure that you are on the image layer, specifically that top image layer, leaving the copy invisible. So we've got our healing tools here. So on your toolbar, we've got spot healing brush. So now it's time to remove the structures that are in our image. We want to get rid of specifically like hands and fingers, as well as all of the toothpicks and skewers, or whatever you use for the structure. So I'm going to go ahead and start with let's just go over some healing tools. So your healing tools are located on your toolbar. We've got a few here. We've got spot healing brush, and patch. Those will probably be the most useful, as well as the clone stamp tool, but they all do something kind of different. So I'm going to show you what they do as we work through the image. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in first, and let's start with maybe the easier area of getting rid of the hand. So I think with especially large areas that the patch tool is a really good go-to. So the patch tool works like a selection, like specifically like the lasso tool. So I'm going to go ahead and make a selection, a very general selection of the hand. And then when you click inside of it, you're going to move it over to an area of the image that is similar and let go. And Photoshop will then basically use what's called content aware and figure out what's around the image to replace it with. When I deselect, that actually looks really good. So the hand is gone. Obviously, we have more structures to take out. So I'm actually going to continue. I want to be careful, though, that I'm not going to touch the actual banana. So notice I'm selecting most of the structure. If I touch the banana, then it's going to try to probably replace this area with the banana, which is not my goal. So I'm going to do kind of the same thing and get rid of more of it. Okay, now from there, the next tool really depends on your background. I'm going to be using the clone stamp tool, which the way the clone stamp tool works is, and keep in mind it's like a brush so you can adjust the size of it, but you need to create a target. So when you hold down Alt, we're going to target an area of the background that we basically want to copy and then paint literally that in the area we're trying to cover. So I'm going to hold down Alt, click once with my mouse, let go, and then I should be able to paint. Now notice that little plus sign, that's telling us where we are basically stealing that information from and directly copying it over. Now this is not going to work so well if you have a pattern background, because then the pattern is not going to line up. And you can even see when I get closer here that there's a slight difference in the background color, but we can fix that in just a moment. So I'm going to actually make a new target that's a little bit closer, maybe make my brush a little bit smaller, and just kind of get rid of that structure there. You could even do things here like if that little end of the banana looks weird, I could even just kind of reshape it a little bit. Okay, but try not to do that too much where it looks photoshopped. Now that little area where the color is a little bit off, I might want to go back into my healing tools. The spot healing brush is a good one to just fix minimal things. So I'm just going to paint over it, and that should fix that area pretty well. Now, if you have a patterned background, I'm going to try to show you it with this one. I don't think it's going to work as well with my image, but you can use what's called the healing brush tool, which works very similar to the clone stamp tool. So if I hold down Alt, I'm still going to make a target somewhere, and then I start to paint over. Now, it's not directly copying what I'm targeting. Instead, it's taking similar textures, so this will work better for patterns. Now, I would still use the patch tool for this large area of structure, because that will just help to remove most of it. And then if I was using a pattern background, I would try doing the healing brush tool, target an area of that background, and then you can try to paint in the rest. Okay, as you can see for my image, that's not working as well. I'm preferring the clone stamp tool. So I'm going to target the background color here, and then start to paint in. Okay, now this is working really well for the structures on the outside of the banana, but as you can see here, we can still see some of the structure in the banana. Alrighty, so there's a couple things we could do here. We could try going to the spot healing brush, making sure that is a nice small brush, and just kind of painting that area and see if that fixes it. And you know what? That fixes it pretty good. If there's a weird edge, we can go back to the clone stamp tool, create a target, and just get rid of, create a target over in the background and get rid of any weird mistakes. If the spot healing brush tool didn't work for you in that area, you could try the patch tool or even the healing brush tool. So let's go ahead and do it another area together just to give you an idea. So I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to go ahead and do again the patch tool for large areas of structure. Make a selection of most of it. Try not to get too close to the fruit or veggies. I'm going to pick a spot of similar color. I'm going to go ahead and deselect. I'm then going to switch to my clone tool again to get rid of the structures that are like sticking out of the banana. So I'm going to make a target near where I'm going to get rid of those structures. And this weird part of the banana, I'm going to do that again. So I'm going to go ahead and make a target over here, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. I feel like that's a weird little pokey part that we don't need. All right, and I'm going to do the same thing down here, but I'm always going to be making a new target because your background might change in brightness. So we want to make sure that it matches pretty good. All right, so that actually looks really good as well. And again, I'm going to switch my tool. Now this time, maybe I can try the patch tool. What if I selected this and moved it over slightly and deselect? That actually doesn't look bad. We can go ahead and grab the clone stamp tool again, create a target, and we can just get rid of that top section. So use whatever tools are going to work best for your image. As you can see here, I'm using a variety of different tools within the same image. So constantly changing my tools to make it work for me. All right, so the patch tool is working really well. The clone stamp tool is working really well. And then every once in a while, I seem to need maybe just the spot healing brush, where I can just paint away some imperfections and Photoshop will try to blend that area for me. All right. Make sure that you keep going and get rid of all the structures. Don't forget that if you can see the shadows of structures, so like down here on the banana, where the structure is holding the banana up, that shadow there also has to get removed. So make sure if we're going to do another large area, we can grab the shadow, we can grab most of the structure, and we can work on getting rid of that. All right, and eventually your image should look something like this. All right, now the very last step here would just be to crop. Now you could also do your cropping in Lightroom, that would be totally fine. But while we're here in Photoshop, I'm going to go ahead and crop, especially because it's really off balance. So into crop, I'm going to go ahead and set my ratio to 2:3, and I'm just going to bring it in, probably center it as much as possible. You can also follow the rule of thirds, whatever works for you, and I think that looks really good. So I'm going to go ahead and confirm that crop in the options bar. And now I can go ahead and do my saving and exporting. So just a reminder on saving, we're going to go to File, Save As, which will ensure that we're saving a Photoshop file so that we can edit things later on. And I do suggest that you save to your OneDrive. Always save to the cloud. You can even make a new folder for our class to stay organized. Alrighty, make sure that you put your name, dash the assignment name anytime that you are saving. And then we're going to go ahead and because it is done, I'm going to go to File and this time Export. We should be able to do a quick export as a JPEG, same location, same name, but this time you'll see the file type, the JPEG. All right. From here, take that JPEG and put it directly back into Lightroom, and you could go ahead and do a final edit there. There might be some extra pizzazz with some presets or manual edits that you might want to do in there. Otherwise, great job.